Welcome back, Whisky fans. 2 drams left. 2 chances to take the top spot on the leaderboard. What I absolutely don't want is another 40% whiskey, like we had yesterday. A little bit disappointing? I think so anyway. It would be nice if in something like the premium whiskey advent calendar you could rule out 40% presentations, but obviously they are premium, people buy them, people think of them as premium, and because people buy them they're very expensive. Hopefully we'll get something a little bit more craft and a little bit better today. Label away, break the seal. Clean glass. And in we go. I can already smell peat on that one. Oh, that's nice. Looking forward to this. This may be, it's a little bit too early to call, but this may be a new #1 spot on the leaderboard. Definitely feeling right at home here. So, interesting phenolics on the nose of this one. That peatiness is dying down a little bit. Got a very intense hit of peat as soon as I opened this one, not even as I got to the glass. So this one is definitely peated. If you're tasting along at home, then I'm sure you guys have probably already realised that. And I think I'm going to go out on a limb here and say I don't think this is a 40% whiskey either. Getting good intensity on the nose with this one, although, as we've seen several times already, you can be tricked into thinking that the ABV and the presentation is better than it actually is when you're just relying on the nose alone, so we'll see on that one. As for the colour of this one, probably slightly paler than yesterday's Balvenie. So, medium gold. It's a lovely, dirty, farmy, sort of cowsheds note on the peat on this one. And a beautiful oily maltiness as well. Lots of old malt notes. So that old malt note, it's the kind of thing that I expect when you get like a heavily peated whiskey matured for 18 years. I'm going to guess 18 on this one. I think that it's not got the dry cask dominated notes that you get on a whiskey in its 20s. It's still got a touch of youth. Although saying that, I guessed 18 on the 21-year-old yesterday and I was wrong. Only by a few years. What's a few years between friends? But on this one, the malty component of this reminds me of that beautiful 18-year-old whiskey from Le Chig that we had on the 2nd or 3rd day. I think that the peat in this one is not as strong as what we had in the Le Chig. But it's a beautifully complex old peater style nose. You're getting lots of peatiness, a lot of that dirty peatiness is intact, but you're getting all those old malt notes, and you're getting some lovely bright notes from the spirit as well. So wherever this is from, and this is definitely Scotch, I think that it's a distillery that produces a really robust base spirit. Lovely, sharp, fruity, orangey notes. Slight salty, maritime quality. Salty oranges, a little bit like a peated Old Pulteney. I'm saying that just because it's got that element of peat and it's got that sort of salty oranges sharpness. There's a definite creaminess to this one as well, and I think part of that is coming through from the age and the fact that that malt spirit has been in those casks for so long. As for what casks have been used in this, I think it's probably a mixture. I think that I'm smelling some bourbon, some sherry, but not too much. I think it's quite a balanced mix of casks. But definitely a very well aged whiskey. As time goes on, this opens up and I'm nosing it more and more. I think it's switching over to focus more on the malt rather than the peat that really leapt out at the start. It's not to say the peat's not there anymore, but the maltiness is really starting to grow and shine on its own. So, time to taste this one, whiskey fans. Looking forward to this. This one should be good. I think it's in a similar vein to the 18-year-old Lechig. I think it's got a touch less body, a touch less peat, similar age. It's a little bit more spirit driven than the Lechig, but it's a beautiful whiskey. Again, lots of sharp, fruity spirit notes on the palate, and it's accompanied perfectly in perfect balance with the peatiness. Just going back to the nose, there's this lovely sourness and lovely creaminess. Not hugely complex. It's not the kind of constantly evolving whiskey that you get for some whiskies when they're in sort of their mid-20s. They become almost protean, that they're constantly changing and hard to pin down. As soon as you smell or taste one thing, it's moving on to something else. It's not quite that. I think that this is a whiskey in its high teens. It's going to have another sip. I think that this is probably 46% if I hadn't said so already. 18 years old. As for where this is from, this probably shouldn't be too hard because it's peated and it's 18 years old. There aren't that many of those around. We've been in this boat before when I guessed the 18-year-old Lechig. It's possible to really narrow it down when you're looking at 18-year-old peated whiskey. So, like I did with the Lechig, I'm just going to do a search for 18-year-old whiskies, see if anything jumps out and jogs my memory. Definitely not Glendronach. Talisker, definitely possible. Kalila, no, because we've had that already. Macallan, definitely not. Johnny Walker, absolutely not. Highland Park. Let's have another sniff. It's possible. But Highland Park 18-year-old is only 43%. I think this is a touch older. Definitely a similarity to Highland Park 18, but I think it's got a touch more body. I think it's a better presentation. Also, I think this one's got a touch. I mean, the peat in the Highland Park 18-year-old is nice. It's definitely there. It's definitely enough, but I think this one's got a touch more peat. Lechig 18, no, because we've already had that. Glen-Scotia 18, no, we've already had that. And it was quite disappointing. Really was surprised at that Glen-Scotia 18. I'll definitely be open to trying that again. But when I tried it in this advent calendar, much, much more disappointing than I would have expected from Glen-Scotia. Chivas Regal 18, absolutely not, because that's 40%. Aberlour, nope, because this has definitely got a lot of peat in it. Jura 18-year-old, we've already had a 21-year-old Jura. This is better than that, and that peat is definitely a very different profile. In the 21-year-old Jura, we had all those vegetal, slightly funky notes in the peat. This hasn't got that. It's laser sharp, really sharp and fruity, alongside the good maturity in the peat. Not Jura. Bowmore, no. Bowmore's got a very distinct, spicy, slightly herbal, medicinal quality to the peat. Again, this is, I think, in a way cleaner. I don't think this is Isla. Deanston, don't think so. So I think it's probably down to, if this is something that I've had before and something that we're all familiar with, and it's not a complete oddball sort of independently bottled thing, if it's something that we all know, I think it's between the Highland Park and the Talisker 18. It's developing beautifully. On the nose, I just had another sniff of that and got a really medicinal, almost Isla-esque, sort of iodine-y floor cleaner kind of note. I'm just covering that up to put a bit of heat in that before I have another sniff. But like I said, I think I'm being led to the Talisker on this one. I think I did say that it had a salty maritime quality to it, and obviously that's something that Talisker always goes on and on about. Another thing that I think you always get on a Talisker is a certain peppery quality to both the peat, and probably comes from the casks as well. So let's just have another look at this, see if I get pepperiness. Yeah. It's obviously difficult because it's so easy to lead people to smell and taste what you're describing, and I don't want to do that. But if you're tasting and nosing this along at home, just take a sniff and just look for that slightly salty, peppery quality. You getting that? One more sip and then we'll have a look. Whatever this is, I hope it's under £100 because I'd quite like to buy a bottle. So let's take a look. Where's it gone? I thought I'd lost it off the table. Talisker 18-year-old, 45.8% ABV. Why have they done that? Talisker famously bottles all of their standard. I'm not sure about like the Storm and Talisker Sky, they're probably lower ABV, but like the 10-year-old and the 18-year-old and most of their releases, they go for a rather strange 45.8, which means that it's not quite a craft presentation as we would see it. Although, obviously, Talisker, owned by Diageo, is probably heavily chill filtered as well. And it's hard to tell with that small quantity and the fact that I haven't put any water in it. But it looks very, very clear, doesn't it? Very translucent. So probably chill filtered. Knowing Diageo, there's probably a little bit of artificial colouring goes in there as well. But nearly 46%, and that's the one that matters more than the others, I think. It's a very good whiskey. Actually getting rather a strong appley note. Quite a dry, almost cider apples, like apple peel note. And I think it's really interesting. I think that's coming through. It's a combination of the base spirit, that old malt and the old peat, and the casks. It's kind of a flavour that doesn't exist in any one. It's really a tertiary flavour coming together out of all the other flavours to give that dry appliness. It's not something that I would notice in the Talisker 10, although it has been a few years since I've tried the Talisker 10. But yeah, wonderful stuff. So I've now got the rather unenviable task of deciding where this goes on the leaderboard, but I can tell you it's going to be near the top. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think of Talisker 18-year-old, and I'll see you tomorrow. Cheers.